I'm Maria Axner. I'm on the Regs and Legs committee that meets on Monday mornings from 9 to 10. And I've been on that for a couple of years. And I'm not a I'm not a wonky kind of person. I'm more of an organizer, but I learn a lot in that group from people who know about policies and laws and technical stuff. So I wanted you to just have that as background because you might want to join us sometime at 9 in the morning on a Monday morning. And that's also how I got to know Mark Dyen, who is the person who reports to us about about what's going on in the legislature, and he gives us that information. So I have a short bio I'm gonna read about him, and we'll And okay, Mark Dyen is an energy efficiency and renewable energy advocate and retired energy efficiency entrepreneur. As an advocate since the early 1970s, Mark was involved in the creation and adoption of energy policy reforms, including the creation of Mass Save, reforms in electrical rate design and adoption of consumer protections, such as the law that forbids utilities to shut off during the winter. As one of the founders and managers of Conservation Services Group, Mark helped design and implement energy efficiency programs in 23 states and the province of Quebec over a 25-year career. Since retirement, Mark has served as a consultant to the U.S. Department of Energy, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, and several energy efficiency and renewable energy companies. So what I'll add to that myself is just that Mark's a good guy, and you can tell from that introduction that he works really hard. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and I'm happy to be here tonight. Uh, what I'm going to try to do, I want to say what I'm going to try to do and what I'm not going to try to do. Okay. I'm going to try to describe sort of the current political scene as I see it in the legislature and prospects for action on climate and related issues. And then I'm going to talk about some of the specific pieces of legislation that are up there. Um, I'm going to focus on the part that I understand the best, which is the complex of issues around moving buildings from using fossil fuel to decarbonizing and being cheaper to live in. I'm going to talk some about solar and not at all about transportation, not because it's not important, but because I try to stick to stuff that I understand pretty well. So up until January of this year, Massachusetts had a plan for decarbonizing and making energy more affordable. It rested on a couple of premises. One was that the federal government was supporting this activity and that there was the Inflation Reduction Act and other federal programs that underwrote and supported the move towards greater energy efficiency, more use of renewable energy, and those related issues. There were tax incentives for electric vehicles, for efficiency in buildings, for heat pumps, for solar, all operating at the federal level, so that the function of the state programs was to integrate with those processes that were run by the federal government. The centerpiece of Massachusetts's plan for decarbonizing was really two big projects. One was a system, a setup to acquire offshore wind facilities, turbines, in large scale to both improve the mix of energy, of renewable energy in the Massachusetts portfolio, and to hopefully have enough new renewable power to offset, allow shutting down of existing fossil fuel plants. Um, and there's a bill, law, called the Roadmap Law, which lays out a plan for getting off fossil fuels essentially by 2050 in 5 year increments with there's supposed to be 5 year increment plans that get there. It was heavily reliant on this offshore wind and then on promotion of electric vehicles and on decarbonization of buildings. Those are the three pillars. Offshore wind for beefing up renewable, decarbonization of buildings, and transportation. And it was wrapped up in this roadmap law that was passed 2 sessions ago. That included an expansion of Mass Save's role to deal with decarbonization and increased emphasis on program equity so that more low-income and tenants people would participate. And the plan empowered gas utilities to deliver non-emitting thermal energy, geothermal networks. And sort of as the other side of that, what the gas utilities were empowered to do, the plan was to restrict the expansion of gas infrastructure, both to save money and to make sure that this emphasis of getting off fossil fuels continued to work. So for those of you who have not been on this planet since January of 2025, a couple of things have gone wrong with this approach. Um, the IRA legislation is not completely repealed, but substantial parts of it have been cut back, and the rest of it is in jeopardy, although there are specific reforms or incentives that remain. Sort of more subtly, the Department of Energy and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency had um, a range of measures that either identified energy pollution, energy caused pollution, or carbon emissions as a problem, and therefore allowed them to regulate those as problem areas. Um, it had things which are a little sort of more subtle, but a little hard to replace. Like there's a program called Energy Star. Energy Star is a widely known brand. It's owned by the U.S. Department of Energy and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency 50/50. It's not, I mean, it's public property in the sense that through those agencies they do it. Um, so that entity, Energy Star, rates and appliances for their energy efficiency. That's the labels you see on them. It qualifies for Energy Star. It has certain other scoring things on it. Very useful project, which is being gutted as we speak. We now have, as evident, I think, to everybody, the federal government is hostile to offshore wind development, not neutral, certainly not supportive. They are blocking offshore wind projects, especially on the East Coast. Even when, as in the big ones for Massachusetts, the project was nearly 80% complete. They're using federal authority, or, as my lawyer friends say, purported federal authority to actually block those things. And the Trump administration has been promoting the expansion of the gas grid in this area and in other areas through a variety of certainly unusual and probably illegal measures, such as threatening to cut off projects in New York on energy efficiency unless New York agrees for an expansion of a gas pipeline. Um, so that's an enormous change in the environment in which the legislature has to look at what are they doing about climate change, energy prices, and energy efficiency going forward. The other big thing that's happened, there are two others. Um, in the winter and spring in Massachusetts, it was unusually cold, and there were a number of uh, rate cases of different kinds before the Department of Public Utilities, which all came together to mean that people who were heating with gas faced substantial increases in their gas heating bills from what they were used to paying. The bulk of that was for increased use because it was colder outside than usual, but there were rate increases involved. And the utility companies, when challenged for the high bills, told people on the phone repeatedly, but all the utility companies said, "Oh, it's not us, it's that increase in Mass Save." And first of all, that's not factually the case, but it's also, they were saying the same thing all across the United States, even in places where there is no mass save program. Nonetheless, the public perception that the high bills of last year were at least in part caused by these kind of social programs, as people put them, mass save, the incentives for solar, and other things that are on your electric bill and much harder to find on your gas bill, were blamed for this here and elsewhere in the country. There was significant political backlash in terms of protests and web-based opposition to these increases. Many legislators and the governor felt the heat of that backlash. And the support for the Massachusetts plan, which I described on the slide before, has decreased. And the politicians of all sorts are, I think, weaker in their support for the Massachusetts plan to decarbonize, for that roadmap bill, and more interested in looking around for alternatives that will affect people's bills right now. So that in terms of prospects for passing things in the legislature, I would say it's a steeper hill to climb than it was a year ago at this time. So in the past several sessions, the big questions were, how far are we going to go in promoting energy efficiency, renewable energy, and decarbonization? And the legislature actually went pretty far in all three of the last sessions. I don't think that's the main question this year. I think the main question this year is, are we going to go forward at all, or are we going to go backward? And if and we can talk about this politically, but when you see, when you hear the governor talking about, we've got an all of the above strategy, which explicitly includes expansion of the gas pipeline system, we've come a long way in the last year, and it hasn't been positive. I just want to say, I mean, just last year, the consensus was gas is on the way out. Consensus in the legislature, although a contested consensus, but it was that gas is kind of on the way out. The roadmap law requires that we get off gas and other fossil fuels. Expansion of the system doesn't make a lot of sense if you're shrinking the system going forward. That's not what various politicians are saying now. Okay, so I want to talk about sort of 6 aspects of what we're looking at. One is the governor's affordability bill, which is H4144, which was released with considerable publicity a couple of months ago, has had its hearing, and is being worked on by the legislature. Then there are some things around mass save reform, around reining in the gas companies' expansion plans, about expanding power for municipalities, finding new money, and promoting solar. So that's kind of the way I've tried to organize this. I'm going to be talking more about themes and less about the details of particular bills, although if people have questions about that, we can go into that. And then I think we'll have a more general discussion. Is that everybody raise their hands if they like that, but I can't see you raise your hands, so whatever. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. Yes, David, you raised your hand. I saw it. Thank you. Okay, the governor's affordability bill is 115 pages long, and this is one slide. So I assure you, I do not have all the detail in here. The theme of the bill is that we're going to reduce the cost to customers. It is not focused. It is kind of scattered, so that these are a sample of the things that I think are important. If people want to go into other things, I've got a nice outline of the bill sitting over here that I can go through and go on more. The principal way that the governor proposes to reduce costs, the big number, is that they're going to allow securitization of certain major expenses, including the mass save budget itself. What that means is that in Mass Save's case, and in some other cases in different aspects of what the utilities do, right now they spend the money as they get it. Mass Save has these fees on electric and gas bills and a few other sources of money, but mostly fees on electric and gas bills. That money comes in every month. It goes to the utility Mass Save programs. Mass Save is not a separate entity. It's a project that the electric and gas companies run. They have this money, they spend it. They spend it on people who are doing technical assessments. They spend it on technical support. They spend it on incentives, which is what everybody knows about. And they spend it on, and they put a substantial amount of money into very high incentive programs for low income people. But they do it every month. The money comes in, the money goes out. Securitization says you can keep spending this money, but you can borrow it and therefore reduce current expenses on the Mass Save fees. And I think that's but it also means you can spread the cost out over time, which in some ways makes more sense. If people are insulating their house, they're going to benefit from that over the next 30 years. And right now, the Massachusetts Mass Save expenditures happen the first year. So there's some logic to it. It allows the state to procure renewable energy projects itself. The current plan, like um, all the projects for offshore wind were being procured by the utilities involved, and the utilities are collecting a service fee for the job of doing that procurement, so that in effect they mark up the bids that they're getting from the offshore providers. And the governor's plan would allow DOER, Department of Energy Resources, to directly procure these renewable energy projects. And an important symbolically but smaller financially thing, it prohibits the utilities from charging ratepayers for lobbying and for corporate advertising. Many of you who've been following this believe that that is already illegal. There's a law against it, but it has loopholes in it that the utilities have been spending some millions of dollars on these projects. And this governor's bill, if it passes, would prohibit that in a more decisive way. Another part of the project in the governor's bill, I see Harvey Michaels is here, so he's going to fill in all the stuff that I don't talk about. It consolidates Mass Save under the management of the electric companies. Right now, as I sort of breezed by, Mass Save is a brand name and a set of programs that are run by the electric companies and the gas companies in coordination, but differently, so that when you get a Mass Save assessment and you get, your free smart strip, and it used to be light bulbs, but other electrical saving devices, the incentives for that are paid for by the electric company. And if you heat with gas and you insulate your house, that incentive is paid by the gas company. And the gas companies and the electric companies cross-bill each other for these things. The governor estimates that this is about 10% of the administrative cost of the program. That seems plausible to me. I've been directly involved in those transactions, and it is pretty bizarre. So that's a pretty straightforward reduction in cost, which would be passed on presumably in reduction in Mass Save fees. And skipping over many pages of other things that the bill does, it allows or actually requires utilities over the next 3 years to set up an offer for on-bill financing of energy efficiency and solar investments. What that means, right now, there's a program called the Heat Loan, which you can apply for and get, that will finance energy efficiency or some renewable energy projects up to $25,000 for up to 7 years. And it's advertised, and from the consumer point of view, it is a zero interest loan. But it's not actually a zero interest loan. It's a loan from the bank to you, and Mass Save fees pay the interest down so that it looks like a zero interest loan to you, but it's actually the bank is making its interest money on that loan, and that is actually quite expensive. People take advantage of it. People use that incentive, and it's a substantial amount of money. And this provision in the governor's bill would allow the utility company, require the utility companies to do that lending directly, use their own credit, and borrow the money in the corporate bond arena, not hitting mass save fees. So the focus of these things is to reduce costs of operating the utilities now in a variety of ways. Again, I have not listed anywhere near half of them, but I think I've hit the big ones. Partly by this securitization, partly by state procurement, and partly by some other changes, all of which would allow the mass save fee to be reduced quickly and some other utility costs to come down as well. So providing visible affordability for all kinds of ratepayers in a way that maintains the effort on improving energy efficiency and decarbonizing buildings as we move along. It is not, as written, it is not a significant retreat from the goals of that the governor has supported. But it certainly opens the way towards such a retreat if that comes from the legislature. And let me just stop for a second on where this is. The bill has been presented to the House and Senate. It's got a number, H4144. There's been a hearing on it, and now it's in front of the Telecommunications Utility and Energy Committee, TUE, which it's a joint committee between the House and the Senate. And historically, the House has been focused on big projects like getting the electric grid ready for all the offshore wind that was supposed to be happening. And the Senate has been focused more on consumer-related things and sort of a broader image of vision as to where we can go on energy. We don't know what this committee is going to do with it. It is extraordinarily unlikely that the governor's bill will come out of TUE without major changes, partly because partly because I've talked to both chairs and they think that's going to happen, and partly because historically the legislature never likes to rubber stamp anything the governor puts in. They want to put their own mark on it. That is something is expected in the next month, which will address basically work off of the Governor's Affordability Act and come out with something new. And as Yogi Berra said, prediction is really difficult, especially about the future. I'm not going to hazard a guess on that, but I other than what I just said, which is I don't think the governor's going to get everything she asked for, and I expect there'll be some major changes. And it may very well be that the bill is divided up into more than one piece of legislation because it's a substantial bill with wide-ranging impact. So let me move on quickly. There's a debate going on about who should run Mass Save. I'm a little conflicted on it since the company I used to work for implemented Mass Save for residential programs for about 20 years. So I've got, but anyway, I'm not going to talk much about who should run Mass Save. I'm going to talk about what it needs to happen. One of them, what it needs to have as an operating process to be part of the plan to get off to decarbonize and to save people money. The consolidation of operation to reduce administrative expenses I've already talked about. They have to combine renewable energy and load management, smart grid approaches with what I think of as the traditional mass save products of insulation, air sealing, and heat pumps. There's a bill that I helped write called, which is up here on the board, that has been introduced in both the House and the Senate, and which would address these problems, requiring Mass Save to offer a more comprehensive assessment, including solar storage and peak control, which are becoming much more important, as well as the more traditional approaches. It has to have a contractor network that can provide quality assurance for everybody who is involved, and it has to provide ongoing support for homeowners and other building owners who are struggling through this process and really have trouble figuring it out. So that's one piece of legislation that 350 Massachusetts and a variety of other organizations are working on. Another set of issues is that the gas companies continue to try to expand their grid. They've got support, as I said, on the federal level, but many pipeline expansions are regulated at the state level. Senate 2290 prevents big pipes, what we think of as transmission pipes, from being expanded. It's a straightforward ban on the expansion of those pipelines. And the Tactical Transition to a Clean Economy 2249 is a bill that was produced by Gas Transition Allies and by the majority leader in the Senate and a variety of other people that calls for coordinated planning between the electric and the gas companies to move people off gas onto electric heat pumps and geothermal energy in a way that doesn't bankrupt the gas company and makes sure that the electric grid is ready to accept people as they move over. The bill also prohibits some other things, putting hydrogen and biogas into the pipelines, which is just kind of a greenwashing project that the gas companies, both here and around the country, are pushing to say, with these other gases in there, the carbon emissions, gas becomes less polluting if you mix it in with these so-called non-polluting uh, products. And then the bill further allows the Department of Public Utilities to regulate network geothermal systems that are already allowed for the gas companies to produce. One of the things that's happening in the state now is that various municipalities, are trying to move faster than the state. And I say on the municipal side, there are two ways to go. And then I saw Lisa Cunningham here, and she's going to give you more detail on this when I give her a chance on the third item. Right now, the gas companies, where there is gas, which is 2/3 of the state, are replacing the gas pipes at a cost of about $3 million a mile, as quickly as they are allowed to do so. And most of the municipalities that are undergoing this treatment are being treated poorly. The gas companies are vague on where they're going to replace the pipes, what they're going to do, and they're doing it at a rate that doesn't allow for alternatives to be proposed. There are a couple of bills, H3564 among them, which would require the gas companies to coordinate better with the municipalities and give the cities and towns and community activists the time to prepare alternatives to new pipes. That's been ordered by a Department of Public Utilities ruling, but the gas companies are not following it. So this bill would write it into law. In the tactical transition bill that I mentioned earlier in the last slide, Section 154 allows municipalities to set up a municipal power generating company to produce solar power or network geothermal power for the use of the municipality as a customer and for sale to residents. So it's sort of municipalization from below. Maria talked about democratizing the energy. This is one kind of interesting approach that would get around the restrictions on actual municipalization that exists in Massachusetts law and hopefully allow some towns to move forward. And finally, in this section, 2292 expands the zero carbon municipality 10-town pilot. I don't know if people were following this, but a couple of years ago, the Senate tried to get authority for municipalities to set up a zero carbon zoning, well, effectively, either basically requiring that there be no new gas hookups, other fossil fuel hookups for new construction. That was battled down to a 10-town pilot, which is underway, and 2292, S2292 would expand that to another 10 towns. Again, all this carrying out the theme of giving municipalities the authority to go faster above and beyond what the state as a whole is doing. New money. The Mass Save budget, I think, has reached its political limit. This is my own judgment on things, given the blowback. And that was orchestrated by the utilities last winter. I don't think the legislature is going to be going above I think it'll be hard to hold on to the $1.5 billion that Mass Save is supposed to collect over the next 3 years. So there are a couple of approaches to getting some new money into the system. Oh, and by the way, Mass Save is achieving approximately a quarter of the rate of production that it would have to get to zero emissions by 2050, or to keep sort of faith with our efforts to save people money and to reduce carbon emissions. So we're not going to increase the Mass Save budget by its current financing, and we are still falling behind on what we ought to be doing. Zero Carbon Renovation Fund, which is one of the sort of more direct financing approaches to this, simply allocates $300 million from the state budget to promote energy efficiency and focuses those investments on climate justice, communities, and affordable housing. Make Polluters Pay, which 350 Massachusetts is leading on, but many other organizations have joined, establishes a climate change super fund with money collected from major climate change corporations like Exxon and Chevron and people like that. This is similar to legislation which has passed and is in effect in New York and Vermont and is under it's going through the legislative mill in many other states. It is also being challenged in the courts by the oil companies on a variety of grounds, and presumably at some point will make its way to the Supreme Court. But in any case, it would raise a significant amount of money, primarily for dealing with damages already caused by climate change, such as flood or wildfire control. But also some of the money would be dedicated towards improving the housing stock so that buildings use less energy. There's a climate bank which exists in Massachusetts right now, but it exists by gubernatorial order. This law would write it into actual law, so it'd be less easy to abolish and appropriate some money to finance it. And finally, there is the governor's bill, as I mentioned earlier, has this thing on bill financing, which requires the utilities to go out and get money to finance at least the electric side of energy efficiency projects. There are other things going on in the legislature on all of these things, but the idea here is that if you look on the Mass Save, how to decarbonize buildings budget as a fixed item by their current means of raising money, these are ways around that fixed item. Finally, I don't want to leave people with a sense of gloom about this. I'm going to recommend a book, which is photographed here, which makes the pretty convincing argument that solar, and even solar with storage, but certainly solar, are now the cheapest form of energy that's available. So in the past, over time, we've always been trying to subsidize solar development because it was a new product that was being developed and the cost had to come down. And Bill McKibben, who's he's certainly an enthusiast for this, but we've seen evidence of it around, which is that solar is now actually cheaper than almost anything else. And that means that we've got some political and financial leeway to push it hard. And I'm going to end up with a few things here, which I guess we who've been active in this movement are still absorbing this fact that solar is now cheaper than other things, and what can we do about it? I don't want to go through these in any great length, but I do think that we will be pushing for a vast investment in solar, in battery storage and other kinds of storage, and in the technologies that allow people to adjust their use so that they are not contributing to the peak on electric grid use, as a kind of a new focus for the energy efficiency movement, as we describe it. So that, I'm sure you'll be happy to know, includes my slides. Thank you very much for your patience on that. Again, as I say, there's 6,000 bills were filed this year, several 100 of them are about energy. I've not covered them all, although I've read astonishingly a large number of them. And what I've chosen here are the ones that I think have both um, organized bases of support that if people want to join in, they can help on. And some of the, and then I spent a lot of time on the governor's bill because that sort of sets the table for how the legislature is looking at things.
Please speak about what happens to batteries at end of life.
Well, I mean, I think we're still finding it out because the mass production of batteries is pretty recent. But the cycle that seems to be happening now is that car batteries at the end of their useful life in cars are being taken out and put into batteries that can go into homes because you can put more of them. Since you don't have to drive the battery around, if it's in a house, you can actually get by with a less productive battery. At the end of life, uh, I believe, I think that the possibilities for recycling those materials are substantial, and the battery technology is changing very quickly. So what is seen now as requiring all these lithium things, which people are concerned about.
Okay, I've heard about balcony solar, and Sue Swanson asks about it. I heard it's quite popular in Germany, but there's difficulties having it here in the States. Could you comment about
Yes.
that?
Balcony solar or plug-in solar is a self-contained panel with a regular old, plug of the sort that you would recognize instantly on it. And if you, it's called balcony solar because in Europe people are hanging it from their balconies, and you plug it into the outlet nearest your house, nearest your thing, your nearest wherever you have the panel, hopefully south facing, and the electricity goes from the panel into the electrical system, and the meter runs backwards. Um, it is legal and being widely used in Europe. Millions have been installed in Germany, as was mentioned, and in others. It is illegal to do what I just said in 49 states in the United States. And if anybody who doesn't know the answer, if anybody can guess which the state which allows it is,
Massachusetts, because our neighbor plugs in a solar panel,
not
and
legal.
it's not. Well, he plugs in one.
Yeah, I know.
Utah is the state that
Utah,
allows it. And also it's in the legislature, there's bills in the legislature of New Hampshire and Vermont to make it legal.
right. And we will be submitting legislation here. The good argument, the reasonable argument for restricting this is that because you're putting electricity into the grid at a surprising place, i.e., in your house, if the power goes down and they've got linemen working on the system, there'll be electricity flowing in that they don't know about. So it's the Utah law, and all the good laws have a requirement that the such devices be limited in size and have the kind of inverter that allows for an instant shutoff if the power goes out. Um, so that's what the Utah law requires. That is an easy fix. And we absolutely should do this here, and we're going to work on such legislation. It's not, if you live in a small apartment and and they do the limits like they've done them in Utah, which you probably would, it'll have a significant effect on your bill in a small apartment, and it's yours. You can take it with you, which means you can also, if it were legal to plug it in at all, and I know that people are doing it even though it's not legal, if we're legal to plug it in at all, one of the great things about this is it allows tenants to get access to the benefits of solar power without their landlord's permission. Plus, they can take it with them when they move. So it's a great thing. It's a great thing. It's one of the reasons I had on my slides. Require, no permit installation of this kind of solar. You don't have to get a permit. You don't have to get an electrician. You don't have to get nothing. It's like plugging in a lamp. And that's what we want, but we want a regulation that says it has to have this safety feature in it. And we know what the Utah law says, and we'll find out the Maine and Vermont ones. So I would put that in previews of coming attractions. We don't have it yet, but we'll try to get it into one of these omnibus bills that's moving right now. I don't want to wait till the next session.
Juliet has a question. Are you aware of any legislation focused on reducing the soft costs
The soft
of
cost of
solar
solar.
installations?
There are a variety of bills. Soft costs, for people who don't know, means all the permitting and siting requirements, some of which are in building code, but mostly of which are imposed by the utilities themselves. And the other thing is it delays in interconnections, which are there. There are a variety of bills. I can do a longer list of them that are not well coordinated. The bills are not well coordinated, but which basically restrict the utilities' ability to interfere with these things. There's a particular bill, Senate 2269, which calls for a web-based automatic approval of new solar installations, getting around all the paperwork and inspections. A simple form that is used in some states, and I think we got a decent chance of getting it here as well. So you did anyway. Yes, long answer. Right. The best thing we got so far is Senate 2269.
Why aren't there more requirements for solar panels on multifamily homes?
I think where we're going is a sort of what I'm thinking of as a big solar bill, something that takes all of these individual pieces and tries to push us towards significant investment in solar as a replacement for all those wind farms that Donald Trump won't let us have. So a couple of elements, right? These plug-in balcony solar things are obviously ones. There are in a variety of places. There are caps on how much solar you can install. The governor's plan is to reduce the incentives that are paid for existing solar while putting in some new ones. I think that has to be phased in. There's legislation that is proposing that new state building, Senate 2302, says that new state building construction has to include solar. There is similar legislation for public schools and for public school renovations. So if you think about all of the places where the flat thing that you want that isn't a farm or a forest, the flat thing that you want to put solar on, the roof of parking lots, the roof of schools, the roof of other public buildings, a variety of places, there's a substantial amount of the Commonwealth that would be available for solar without, one of the concerns that people feel, and I feel also, is that that one of the easy ways to do solar cheap is to cut down woodland and lay the solar on the ground with a small bracket that holds it up. That's cheap. It's easy. It's a bad idea because we need we need the woodlands as well. So that you want legislation which promotes widespread solarization of what's already called disturbed land. A parking lot is disturbed land if you put solar on top of that. Anyway, so that I think where we're going is for where we're heading politically is for a bill that sort of sweepingly facilitates solar everywhere. It's a good idea. Now I can see people's hands, so I see Lisa Cunningham's hand up.
I was just gonna, hey, Mark, that was a great presentation. Thank you so much. It was really fantastic. I really appreciate it. This isn't about our legislation specifically, but just related to the solar discussion. For all those communities that have adopted the opt-in specialized code, which is now 55 communities across Massachusetts, representing 31% of the state's population. If you do not build all electric buildings, new buildings, you are required to put on a minimum amount of solar. That's if you're not building all electric. So that is an existing requirement for new buildings only, new construction only, in all the 55 towns and cities that have adopted the opt-in specialized code, which is the highest building code that most communities can now adopt. But there is a higher building code, which is the legislation that Mark referred to, which our nonprofit Zero Carbon MA is also working on, which is the 10 community fossil fuel free demonstration program. And if you're a resident of Newton or Cambridge or Brookline or Lexington or Arlington, or 5 other cities and towns that I can't remember right now, you're already part of that program where new and major construction is mandated to be all electric. But what we're trying to do is expand this program to enable more than the first come, first served 10 communities to participate in this program, to have the ability to mandate all electric construction in new and major construction.
Janet had a question about how would getting a zero interest loan work in the governor's bill?
The governor's bill doesn't explicitly do anything about the existing heat loan. It creates this other thing. And what you would, this other thing is called inclusive utility investment or on-bill financing. What it would probably do, I mean, it doesn't spell this out in great detail, but is what I've seen work in other venues is you get your mass save assessment and it says there are these things, you have to insulate the house, you have to seal up the leaks, you want to put in a heat pump and a solar panel or something, some menu like that. And if you do, your bills will go down. If you do all those things. And then the utility says, do you want to do it? It's going to be, it's a $40,000 project, approximately. And you say, yes, I want to do it. And they say, well, can you pay for it yourself? Would you like to borrow the money? And they say, okay, I can't spend $40,000. I want to borrow it. We'll sign you up here, right, for this loan package. You will be repaying it on your electric bill over the next 10 years in a way that means your bill goes down now. And you would sign up for it. And then the work would be done and the people doing the work would be paid by the utility and your electric bill would go down because you're saving electricity and go up because you're paying back the loan. And the way the bill is written, that has to balance out so you're a little better off than you were before you did the investment. So that's how it will work. I've seen it work that way in the Tennessee Valley Authority on a very large scale, promoting heat pumps. And we've had in Ipswich Municipal a small pilot on the same project here with Center for Ecological Technology, a nonprofit in the state operating the program. So anyway, that's probably a longer answer than you were looking for, but that's how it would work.
So Charles asks, how much of a threat do you feel is the absence of reliable energy numbers from the federal government in terms of legislative planning?
Yeah, it's a little harder. I mean, we have not seen the collapse of this federal government reporting on energy issues that we're starting to see on weather and on the basic economic statistics around which everybody in the business plans. So that hasn't started to happen yet. But given the intentions of this administration and their thoroughness, I would expect it'll happen over a while. On the other hand, Massachusetts collects its own statistics on this, and some of these statistics, a significant amount of the information is collected by non-governmental bodies. For instance, one of the key questions is what's happening to the system peak on the electric grid. Well, there's this outfit which is, called ISO New England, which absolutely has to know the right answer to that because they're the people who turn on or off the power plants to make sure that if you're turning on your light switch on peak, the system has electricity for it. I don't see how they could, I suppose, tell ISO New England to stop publicizing that. But right now it's available. I mean, it's not a federal government thing. It's ISO New England puts out, I think it's in 15-minute increments, what power plants are being used, what the peak looks like, all that stuff. I don't see how they can stop that. I don't know. I mean, it's predicting what this administration, what they won't do, is not something that I think I can make money on. I mean, they continue to exceed my expectations in sort of ruthlessness and willingness to violate norms and common sense. So,
Thank you. Lisa has provided some more information about the act to further empower local climate action. It expands the fossil fuel-free demonstration program, which is currently limited to 10 communities. I don't know, Lisa, if you want to say anything else.
Thank you so much. I don't want to derail the meeting at all, but I can put in a slide deck about this, and if anyone is interested in more information, I'd love it if they contacted me, particularly in communities that, well, in any community that's adopted this legislation, or a community that has yet to adopt this, or is unable to adopt this. But I'd love to hear from you, and I'll put some more information in the chat. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yes, let's perhaps we can talk more to you later. Jill asks, how concerned are you that the president's threats relative to coal might be? I know she's
yeah, I mean, if the people haven't heard it, Trump is appropriating money to promote wider use of coal. Harvey, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not that worried about that. I think it's, in the most literal sense, smoke and mirrors, because coal is extremely expensive compared to other fuels that are available. It's way more expensive than new solar. It's more expensive than natural gas. I think, they're going to do. They're certainly going to try to do terrible things. I think the coal industry has been in decline for what, 70 years, 50 years? And I can't, outside of West Virginia, where the coal companies literally run the legislature, I don't see anybody who's going to put new coal on anywhere at any price. But existing coal plants are already getting, Trump has ordered, under a fictitious energy emergency, certain existing fossil fuel plants to keep operating. I expect that will continue, but I can't imagine the fleet growing, although, again, that may just be that I don't have enough imagination. But it is astonishing that he's promoting coal for the United States and coal for export as well. Harvey, did I miss something on that one?
Yeah, I think you got it. It's hard to see how coal's going to come back as a power plant fuel. First of all, I think we're down to one plant in New England, and in order to play in New England, you have to have good enough economics to compete, because our power plants compete through the ICE New England exchange that you described, and they can't. So you'd have to give them an awfully large subsidy in order for them to be here.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, they have bad intentions. There's no doubt about that. But there's somewhat limited power. Promoting gas, on the other hand, is a real deal, right? They bludgeoned the governor of New York into approving a gas pipeline expansion that she and the previous governor had opposed. And I expect, from the way our governor is talking, it sounds like she's willing to sign on to some expansion of big gas transmission systems as well on this, all of the above strategy that she's now talking about. So I think it's going to be a very hard fight to stop that kind of stuff, interstate gas pipeline expansion. I think where we can succeed, the tactical transition bill and other measures that we have pending and some legislation that exists should allow us to start shrinking the pipeline grid that takes gas from the big transmission pipes to your house or my house. Shrinking that, getting houses either on Lisa's 10 more town pilot or other things that we're promoting. Start shrinking the gas grid so they may be able to bring more gas in, but they may not be able to sell it. And certainly sell it to individuals. And I think we've got, I think we've got a reasonable chance at holding the line or making progress on that over the next couple of years. But again, the legislation, the tactical transition bill that I mentioned earlier, and the municipal empowerment bill that I mentioned, both of which create powers for the public in one way or another to stop gas company expansion. I think those have viability. They are operating under the federal threshold so that the President of the United States cannot legally block efforts to get people off gas at that level. And every customer who leaves means that the gas companies have fewer people from whom to make profits. And that eventually will cause serious problems for them. But again, I do think people should think about, I think being active at the state and local level. I've mentioned some of the organizations, Sierra Club's another one, 350 and 350 Mass, Lisa's group, Zero Carbon Mass, Gas Transition Allies, there are a variety of organizations in which you can participate either on the state policy level or in cities and towns, and they all need help. We have to sort of fight through the discouragement and keep fighting in the areas where we can win. I don't think we can get Donald Trump to open up offshore wind much. I mean, the one that's 80% complete, I think he's going to lose on. But the other ones, they can block permits till the cows come home. But they can't stop us from putting up lots of solar. They can't stop us from getting people to switch off gas or to reduce their gas use by even a partial heat pump. A heat pump that is not used in the depth of winter is going to reduce gas use 50, 60, 70% in that household. That kind of thing over time is going to make a big difference in terms of the gas company's ability to keep pushing their product.
Because of Trump, has the En-ROAD simulator had to be adjusted at all to deal with what's happening? I'm just curious about that.
It's been expanding in terms of the kind of options that it looks at and understanding what the implications are. And of course, some of the scenarios compared with a year ago don't look particularly good. And but the idea of the tool is to be an aid to those who are trying to figure out what combination of policies will actually work to keep our climate under control. So I think it's going to be a really important tool for those who are being, honestly considering how to deal with the problem and try to solve it.
Thank you. Great presentation. Very interesting. With the incentives ending at the federal level for solar, are the state programs likely to make solar still affordable, or can we expect that prices?
That's certainly the intent, right? I mean, the problem I think there's going to be an adjustment period in how we do incentivizing for solar. The net metering current system was designed. This is where I'm going to step into trouble, but was designed when solar was more expensive than other things, and was sort of designed to, in my view, to sort of deal with that fact. Now that solar is cheaper, both here and in other places like California where they're promoting it, there's sort of a policy feeling your way to try to, in a sense, right size and right shape the incentives for solar. The governor's proposal, which was to end net metering and switch it over to the Smart 3 program that they're developing, I think others and people more involved in solar than I am believe is too abrupt. That you've got sort of business that's underway, where deals were made on the basis of the existing system, you cut it off quickly, and you end up with what happened in California, which is some 80,000 people getting out of the solar business before the new incentives and structures got going up. So I think that would be a mistake. And I think there's actually significant recognition of this fact in the legislature, both houses, that's too abrupt. So you want something that ramps down the existing system, ramps up a new one. And the new one, I believe, will take account of the fact that solar is much cheaper than it used to be. And you don't really need as much incentive as you used to have. The other thing I think that the state should look into on solar is some system for bulk purchase, right? So solar is not a fashion item. I mean, we've tried to do bulk purchase things on things like refrigerators, and you get into discussions about, is slate gray an adequate color? Does this have an ice maker? You get into, you've crossed over from does this thing keep stuff cold and do it efficiently to a whole fashion discussion. But solar isn't like that. All the panels look pretty much the same, and you could buy them in bulk, and do what we've actually achieved with insulation, which is effectively the price of insulation. Doesn't look like it, but when Mass Save comes to you, there's been a price that has been bargained down from what the contractors would have charged to what is a pretty reasonable approach. I think we can do that with solar and maybe with some other things as well. But the state has to, I think the big thing for the state is to say, we're going to make solar fill as much of the hole that offshore wind is now created, so that we can keep going. Yeah, as Lisa says, the federal incentives are gone. So there's kind of a rebalancing that has to happen. It's not going to be, it takes a while to sort of think through, okay, if we do this and they do that, how does it all work out as a pragmatic program thing? But I think that's where we're headed. Mr. Brown.
Speaking of solar and the price of solar, there's this tariff thing, and I think all the solar panels will come from China. Is that going to throw any monkey wrench into the low price equation there when we start paying
Well,
more
I
for
mean,
the imports? Huh?
they've already put tariffs on that. Yeah, it'll be in the same mess as everything else. But there's nothing. If the demand is there, people are building solar. I mean, at the moment, the United States is the only place on Earth that is charging significant tariffs on Chinese solar panels. And they've got a lot of capacity. Anyway, I don't have a quickie answer to that, but yes, it's in the mix. It's going to complicate things. Some of it's already hit us. It's really cheap, even with 50% tariffs. It's shockingly cheap to do solar these days. Mary,
Yeah, actually, but correct me if my understanding is that the largest fraction of solar is not the panel, it's the installation
yeah,
support structure and so forth. So that if you double the price of the panel, you haven't done anything like doubling the price of the
right.
whole.
But the question is, where are those the brackets and braces that hold the things up? Where are they going to be made? They're probably made in China too, but they can also be made in Vietnam or Brazil or Cleveland, right? There's nothing high tech or fancy. I mean, it's a, steel bracket that's the right size and shape and has holes drilled in it so you can put the panels in. I don't see it. If we create the demand, we can drive down that price. I'm pretty confident of that. But that's also, even if I weren't, that's what we got. With that, in effect, there are only a certain number of levers you can push on policy. That's one that's in our hands that I don't think they can block. Maria, you got your hand up?
Maybe you already said this, but you still get 15% instead of the 30% rebate on solar, correct? Is that correct?
As I understand it, yes.
Okay. And then the other thing is you said we still have to fight for these things. And I just what's your picture of how we fight for things? Is it around the legislature, calling our legislature and organizing around that? Are there other things that you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, yes. Certainly passing the legislation that I outlined and some bills that I didn't have time to is important. Most of the stuff that I talked about empowers people or municipalities to move on their own.
Mhm.
That's seems to me the function, what we can do with legislation. Um, I think municipalities, I think there's tremendous potential. I think the 10-town pilot shows the potential for that, but there are other potentials that are available. I mentioned when I was talking about the tactical transition bill, a clause that was not put in by gas transition allies, but actually came from Senator Cream's office on their own, which allows municipalities to set up power generating companies by vote of the city council or the town government, which can produce, that is, borrow money and put up solar panels or network geothermal, use that energy themselves and sell it to their citizens.
Right. And there's no profit to the utility.
There's
We
no
just,
profit to the utility, and
we
you're
just,
not waiting on the utility to decide to do it. So if you want to put solar on all the school roofs and all the school parking lots and the other municipal buildings that have flat roofs, and you produce more electricity than you can use, you can sell it into your municipal aggregation system or some other way to people, and that will reduce their bills. That's legislation allowing for municipal political action. And that sort of thing I think we ought to look at. And then I think we keep fighting with the state and with the state government against Trump's illegal attempts to block, the kind of renewable energy that he's trying to block. And we'll win some, we'll lose a lot of those fights and we'll win some of them. And you keep the industry alive and you keep making progress. The thing to do, what we can't do, or we can do whatever we want, but looking at this scenario and saying this is a disaster, I want to go hide for a couple of years, is probably a bad idea. I think it hurts the industry. I think it hurts our political mobilization, and it lets them win. And I don't think they have this. I think we can beat them in particular fights, and that they are trying to prop up an industry which is expensive and dangerous and dying.
yes.
And we are on the side of the future that is cheap and non-polluting, American made, and not really subject to monopoly profits. So that's, we've worked with worse hands. We've been in poker games with worse hands than this. And it seems to me that we should really rededicate our efforts to making this reality.
Thank you.
If people want to get involved with either 350 or Gas Transition Allies, you can let me know. The Sierra Club, I imagine you know how to reach. Lisa Cunningham's put her name and how to reach her there. Mass Power Forward, a number of organizations are involved in that, including many of the religious organizations that we're involved in. It's a coalition, but it's a good forum in which to pursue these efforts. But I do think the time is now to push this stuff. Take a little time out of your day, or a lot of time if you want, and try and help us get this legislation passed and to get your city or town moving. Also, getting your congregation to move on decarbonizing your sanctuaries is, one of the original purposes of this organization, and is a valuable thing.
Are there hearings coming up that people should come to?
Yes, we get about 10 days notice on these, which is one of the transparency reforms. You used to get no notice. Now you get 10 days. So yeah, there will stuff. I will let you, Maria, know, and you can let other people know as big hearings come up. I think the one on the tactical transition stuff around gas related things is going to come up. I think there'll be one on Mass Save. Well, there was one on Mass Save already. And the governor's bill has had its hearing. And I would expect, well, I don't know what will happen with that. Something will come out of TUE and go to House Ways and Means. TUE is Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy Committee. It's the big place where most of these bills go. There'll be stuff on financing as well. I will let you know again, but we get 10 days notice.
Thank you. Mark, that was so good. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody who came.